In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. As often happens in the course of the church here, this is Sunday and the festival upon which various keynotes and meanings converge, as indeed has been said. The 22nd of November is a special holiday of ours, which is devoted to the Gnostic saints, even as the 1st of November is devoted to the saints of the Universal Church. And in addition to that, this is the last Sunday before the beginning of Advent, which is the preparatory season for Christmas. So next Sunday will be Advent Sunday already. There are 4 Sundays until Christmas. And so there are a number of keynotes which we could sound at this time, but because of the limitations of time, we will have to concentrate them. First of all, as many of you may remember, especially from some of our discussions in the early part of this month, that the concept of sainthood, of certain people becoming saints, is a time-honored one, not only in Christendom, but in many spiritual traditions in the world, and probably the best parallel being that of the ancient Greeks, who had said that the categories of humans are mortals, heroes, demigods, and gods, and that there is a progression. There is definitely the possibility of passing from the more terrestrial and therefore lower orders of this to the higher. And that is called apotheosis in Greek. And believe it or not, the Greek Orthodox Church still uses the term theosis as a possibility for humans, which literally means becoming divine. And so it is within this chain that sainthood exists, and we might say that it is the equivalent of the ancient Greeks' concept of heroes, because the heroes are spiritual heroes. They are people who have come to manifest the highest aspect of the human soul to a heroic degree, and from that they can pass into the yet higher realms of being and join the immortals. And so it is incumbent upon us to recognize our relationship to the Church Triumphant, as it has been called in Christendom, to the kingdom of the glorified souls, and not only to look to them as examples, which indeed they are, but also as our helpers, because even though they may have shed the body, their ability, their power to help us in matters spiritual, and perhaps even in others, certainly has not disappeared, but has in fact increased. And so I think it is really a reality to rejoice over, that we not only have, as we are so thankful among ourselves and in this place, we not only have our human community of those interested in and devoted to the Gnosis, but we also have a wider community, a community that extends like a glorious ladder of the sages, which is one expression in Old French, l'escalier des sages, that reaches from here up to the aeons of the pleroma, and that we are all connected in that fashion, and that we all have really the same objective, to return where we came from, to the bosom of the divine. As stated in many traditions, and that's, for instance, indicated in the book of Revelation, where the statement is made, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. And that is the objective. And we have a great deal of help along the way. And certainly one very important item of help is a valid and time-honored and effective spiritual practice. We are still suffering in certain respects from one of the historical afflictions of humanity, which was particularly strong in the 19th century and into the 20th, and it is the false conviction that it all can be done in our heads by thinking. You don't have to do anything to be good, to be wise, to be enlightened. You just have to think. It would seem to me that the project hasn't worked very well. Because there has been a lot of thinking, and it would seem that the results were minimal. One very fine gentleman, late Professor Ernest Wood, who was one of my teachers, who spoke here many times in the past, and who had lived in India for 25 years and was, very accomplished in these fields, was one to say, you have to remember that thinking only leads to more thinking. Once we come to recognize that, then we can put the results of our thinking function into the proper place. They certainly have their proper place. They help to explain many things. They help to bring a certain type of meaning into our lives. But there are important elements and important projects beyond that. And that is why, while spiritual religious teaching always exists, there always is a teaching ministry wherein we receive instruction and food for our thoughts. There also must be a spiritual practice. And the spiritual practice of historical Christendom has been the practice of the sacraments. And at their very center is the sacrament which we have just participated in and partaken of. If you think about it, if you only use your head, it doesn't make any sense. And perhaps that is its greatest virtue. Because there are actions, there are activities and practices which are designed to lead us beyond that which makes sense here. Beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond all earthly things. And to help us with that, there has always been some form of an office whereby these spiritual practices were facilitated in our nature, and this was very often called the priesthood. And so our tradition participates in the priesthood. It has its priests in order to make available to everyone that spiritual practice which nourishes us at a deep level within, and which is, so to say, the way bread, the nourishment for our inner nature in order to move forward to gnosis and into the kingdom of the divine light beyond it. And that is why we have priests. And that is why it is my dearly nourished hope that we will continue to have priests. Because, as you very well see, and sometimes in a terrifying manner, we live in a period of history which has many strange and often terrifying changes. And one of the changes is, in all likelihood, according to some of those who it would seem have been able to predict such things, because I only follow that. I don't want to be a prophet, you know. The great archetype or figure of American culture, Yogi Berra, had stated at one time that predicting is hard, especially of the future. And therefore, I don't want to do that, you see. But on the other hand, there seems to be a sufficient consensus of great prophetic insight that indicates that we are within the process of great spiritual changes. Now, they are not as quick and as dramatic as, let's say, the 1960s generation envisioned them. They, like the mills of the god, grind slowly but exceedingly fine, and they take hundreds of years. But they are here, and they are taking place. Within that changing spiritual atmosphere, there must be a nourishing spiritual practice. One of the reasons being is that the changes, even though they come slowly, still are of such a nature that the thinking mind will not be able to deal with them. So we will need, humanity will need resources other than the thinking mind, other than the senses, and I dare say also other than technology. And therefore it is of crucial importance that we contribute our share to the continuity of the spiritual practice of the sacraments, so that they will be here even when we individually are no longer here, and will continue to nourish those who are moving into the new aeon and through the new aeon to liberation, the liberation of gnosis and the entry into the paramount. So that is the reason why we have priests. That is the reason why we have the holy sacraments. And it is, I think, it should be of some import that, according to the available information, everywhere over the last half a century and more, when sort of little Gnostic renaissance has occurred in the world, everywhere where there are people who are Gnostics, they try to have a sacrament. And the majority of the new Gnostics have the seven sacraments and the Holy Eucharist. As we receive some of this information, we can see that. Why is that? Because a real Gnostic recognizes that something must be done, not just thought. And that doing is done by the divine within us, if we approach it properly, and if we offer it the kind of spiritual stimuli and nourishment that it requires. And so it is my prayer and my hope that once I won't be able to fulfill my vocation as I have for so long, because there is a time and term to everything, as Gurdjieff said, that our priests will be here, our sacraments will continue, and that we will be able to offer to those who come to us the bread of the angels, and the lifeblood of creation, which has been bequeathed to us by the fullness itself, through its incarnate messengers who have brought it to us. One of whom, so tradition tells us, said, do this in remembrance of me. And so it is with great joy that I participated in this Eucharist today. It's again with great joy that I felicitate my dear brother, and that I thank you from the bottom of my heart for having been here with us, and so that together we could participate in this sacred and joyous occasion. And as we hope and pray, we can participate in many more. And so may the mystery of that which hangs twixt heaven and earth descend upon us and remain with us always. Amen.